What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show, bringing you all the action from the Premier League and SerieA, England and Italy. I am your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you?
Chilling like a villain, man. We just, for those of you who don't know, or for listeners of the pod that are, invested in us personally, they care about the host of the
What
show.
up, Nikolai? What's up, baby?
Matt and I just got back from a trip a couple days ago to Myrtle Beach. So, we're kind of feeling a little down, but we're good. I've still got a little sore throat. I guess a couple days of drinking in a row isn't too good for our health.
Yeah, it turns out
close to 30.
Staying up till 2 a.m., heavily drinking all day. And they're just doing that for like 3 days straight. It's just not the move for us anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
We're on the wrong side of our 20s to be competing like that at this stage. Also turns out sitting in a bar where they allow smoking indoors is also maybe not the best for the old lungs. So we had a great time, though. No bad stories. Nothing bad happened.
Nothing bad did happen.
Didn't have to bury any bodies. I'd say all in all, very successful trip, and we had a lot of fun. And this was like our kind of last weekend too, before soccer is back in full swing. We have the Premier League back this weekend, and so we are bringing you, like we promised you last week, a little Premier League preview. This is going to go the same way as our preview did last year. We kind of condense our preview. A lot of podcasts and news sites, whatever, will bring you alphabetical breakdowns for each team. Those are out there. I think those are great. Ultimately, though, I think what most people want out of their season previews for every sport is they want to know who you're picking to win the title, whatever it is. For the Premier League, they want to know who you're picking essentially for like top 4, top 6, who you think is going to get relegated, a few other teams that you think could maybe do well or do worse than people expect, and maybe a few like individual player picks, things like that. So that's what we do. We're going to bring you our top 6 choices, teams that we think will finish in the top 6, our bottom 3, who we think will get relegated. We're also going to bring you a team that we think can overachieve what at least kind of general expectations are, and a team that we think will underachieve compared to those expectations. We each picked a top scorer, and we have a few player over-unders for goals. I couldn't find any points totals like we did last year online, and I like when other people make them. Could not find those on any betting website, so just the player goals over-unders. Let's start, shall we? Dom, I would actually love for you to start with your top 6. I'd actually really love for you to start with who you picked as your champion this year, because you've gone, I would say, against the grain with this one. Dom is looking affectionately at an Arsenal jersey hanging up in his wall.
Listen, all right? You guys give me so much shit for this all the time about, Dom's not really an Arsenal fan. Dom's a Milan fan. You're right, but you know what? I'm still going to rep the boys when it comes to this prediction. The Gunners are winning the title. They have the experience of, at least one season, right? Competing at the highest level and understanding what it does take to compete with City. And I mean, listen, they led the league for most of the season, dropped the ball a couple of weeks, and that's all it takes for City to make a comeback. Seriously, if Arsenal was just a tad bit more consistent last season, they could win the title. So I think that they're making some signings to help bolster, the team. They're bringing in some big names, and I just think that they're going to beat City to the title this year. I have City second. I think that Liverpool rebounds pretty heavily this year, and I think they finish third. United, they finish right under Liverpool. Newcastle in 5th, and then Brighton sneaks into the top 6. I think that Chelsea still will underperform this year, and I do think that Spurs will underperform this year. So Brighton will sneak themselves into a European competition spot.
So I like your top 6. I'd like to start with Arsenal because I think this is really, I think most people in the preseason are kind of choosing between City and Arsenal. A lot of people are picking City. Spoiler alert, I also pick City to win what would be a record 4 straight Premier League title. No one's done that in the English top flight. There are like competing ideas with Arsenal for me that are kind of keeping me away from picking them for the title, but yet I think could also mean that they could be for a title. You know, I see both sides here. I see the positive and the negative for them. The positive is that they are a young team, and they were a young team last year, and that typically young teams are just going to improve, and that they're just going to get better. And I like the business they did this summer. I really like the Declan Rice signing and Jurgen Timber signing. Kai Havertz, I'm still in and out on. We'll see. I'm willing to like let them roll the dice on that, whatever. But I think Declan Rice is a great addition in their midfield, and I think Timber is going to provide them, great depth as a fullback option, or if he plays in the middle. I'm curious to see how they deploy him through the season as well. They also get David Raya, who's going to compete and looks to probably take over for Marin Ramsdale. If there's one weakness that Arsenal had defensively last year, and we saw it even in the Community Shield, is he's not the best with the ball at his feet. He's had some scary moments, and those can be the fine margins on which a title can be decided. So maybe David Raya, who's better at distribution, helps kind of fill out those margins. The negative for Arsenal, and something you hit on, is that you said they had to be more consistent. They were a very good team last year, and as someone who's watched my team compete with this Manchester City team of the last 5 years, you can get 96 points and still not win a title. You can get 91 points and still not win a title. Those are just the margins you're playing with this team are so high and so thin that Arsenal were on a historic pace going into Christmas. In fact, the pace that they were on, every other team that had hit those marks had won the title, except for Liverpool in the season where they got 97 points and Manchester City finished with 98. That's just the level that you have to be on with City when they're on it, and they were last year. And I just worry that they ran really hot up to that stage, and I don't want to call anything they did last year fluky, but I think they overperformed in some aspects. And I think there's some balance between their overperformance and that their, youth taking an upgrade over the year can find a middle ground there. But we talked about them as overperformers in some ways for expected goals. Odegaard and Martinelli had a big overperformance. Is it possible that they're just, especially someone like Martinelli, is just a very good finisher, and he's going to consistently finish, over expectation? That's certainly possible. But I think there's still question marks with me for Arsenal. I think there's still mentality question marks too. That's something with young teams. That's something that can change over the course of an offseason. And you've seen teams, come back and be very resilient. And maybe Arsenal are one of those teams. But they have not beaten City straight up either. That's a huge question mark for me. If you're gonna beat City to a title, you have to at least beat them once in the league. They've not been able to do that, and that is my big question mark with them. But yeah, I think there's definitely the potential there. I don't think it's crazy to say that Arsenal could win the title. I just think I think there's maybe more questions than some people are making it out to be, and that yes, last year was very good for them. They also didn't have Europe. They crashed out of it pretty early, and they were able to rotate their squad. You're in the Champions League now. There's definitely an expectation that you pour more resources and time into that. And that that preparation is just a little different than your Europa League, and they could end up in a very challenging Champions League group.
Yeah,
just given the pot. But that's all, speculation. But
I
don't mind the pick.
I know only one team in the last, I forget however many years, but the team that has won the Community Shield, aside from I think Liverpool did it, to win the league after winning the Community Shield. Whoever normally wins the Community Shield does not win the league. Arsenal did beat City for the Community Shield. So let's first off hope that Arteta didn't, pull out all the stops and show his entire, strategy to Pep, because Pep, his brain's always ticking. He's always going to find some way to adjust the team and his tactics in order to beat whoever he's playing. So obviously, this is still preseason and whatnot, but Arsenal have been able to beat City, just not in the league. So to play to your point, if you want to beat City to that title, they're going to have to, beat them in the league. I think that this is a big season for Arsenal to prove a lot to a lot of people. You said there's still questions that need to be answered for the team. So I think they step up to the occasion.
Yeah, I think the last team to win the Community Shield and then go on to win the league was like 2010 or 2011. Liverpool won the Community Shield last season, and obviously did not even come close to the title. But yeah, I think 2010 or 2011 was the last team to win the Community Shield, and then go on to actually, and that's just because there hasn't been a lot of repeat title winners except for City over the last few years. But that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, just one of the last 12 winners of the Community Shield have gone on to seal the league title at the end of that campaign.
Yeah. So you had Liverpool in third. I originally had Liverpool in third on my list as well, which here's my top six: City, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, Spurs, and Newcastle. I originally had Liverpool third. I switched them with United. I'm getting a little worried about Liverpool, and part of me even wanted to drop them out of the top four. I'm getting a little pessimistic about this season, and I don't know if I'm just being overly pessimistic about them because it's my team. I think you're always a little more critical on the team that you support. But the midfield's still a huge question mark. They made Szoboszlai and McAllister are two good signings. I was very happy with them. You lose Fabinho, Henderson, Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita. Now, 3 of those names didn't play a ton last year, but and were not regular starters. But Fabinho and Henderson were regular midfield starters. Fabinho was our number 6, that kind of destructive force in the middle and recycle play. We don't have someone to do that right now. Thiago is not someone that you can rely on for a full season. When he plays, he's very good, but he's a guy that is going to be playing mostly anywhere like around 25 to 20 Premier League games. It seems he's not a guy that's giving you 30 plus. The midfield is a huge question mark going into the season. Center back depth is a huge question mark going into the season. Defensively, still a huge question mark coming into the season. If you've watched some preseason, still a team that's getting beat a lot on long balls over the top. Teams are just avoiding Virgil's side and switching, to where they know Trent has to get overextended, because that's just his role with his team, and that opens up a channel in which they can play long balls and really do a lot of damage. We'll see if Trent gets moved in the midfield. That's the big question mark. He did at times at the end of last season when Liverpool had a little bit of a resurgence. Seemed like they might even break into the top 4 again. Who knows? That remains to be seen. There's still this Romeo Lavia, debacle has been insane. I've not seen anything like it with Liverpool and transfers in a long time. Does not fill me with a lot of hope. So I'm pessimistic on Liverpool. I think attacking-wise, I think they're fine. They have tons of options. I actually think they have too many options, and I think it's going to be a little cumbersome to deal with, but they do have Europa League, which is going to allow them to rotate a little bit. But yeah, I have tons of questions about Liverpool coming in the season. While I was doing this, I realized I have questions for every team. I didn't even have questions for City. Listen, not for nothing. They're still a very good team, and I'm picking them to win the title. Lutsen Gundogan is not nothing. This is a guy that has provided tons of experience, tons of clutch goals. I know that that's not, something people talk about a lot, and, some of that is luck, but this is a guy that has come up late in the season for Manchester City over the years and scored them. I mean, he won them a title a few seasons ago in the final day. He's just that type of player that just, for whatever reason, in the big moments, when the league is on the line, he performs very, very well. You lose Riyad Mahrez, who had become a starter and was always a guy that could come off the bench even, and a great rotational option for them, or a great starter option for them. And that's sort of been Pep's, wheelhouse over the last, few seasons with City has been, he loves the wingers that are not as direct anymore, but that are able to control the ball, dribble inside, hold up play, act more as number 10s out on the wing rather than, number 9s or number 7s, more traditional sort of attack the net type of forwards. I think it's fair to question what that might do. I don't think it's totally unreasonable to think that they could maybe be a little less than what they were last year. Also, when you come off a treble, I think it's only natural to maybe have a little bit less desire, a little bit less hunger, but who knows? They're going for the 4th straight title. It's unprecedented for a reason. I just don't know that it's, there's much anyone can do to stop them, especially when Erling Haaland is in the mood. I'm trying to think of who else in this top 6. United is interesting with me because I think they've had a very good transfer window. I think they've addressed a lot of their team needs. Now, Rasmus Højlund is injured. He has a stress issue in his back, which is always a scary thing to hear, especially with young players. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Unclear on what timeline that might look like. But, we've seen stress injuries with young players. Marcus Rashford, his own teammate, had a similar issue a few years ago, and it took him a while to recover. And he had this terrible back fracture that he was playing through. And, so hopefully, they find the rest there. But I think largely speaking, with Mason Mount, they're clearing out some of the players that they've wanted to clear out. It still seems like they're going to be doing some business, but I think United could have a strong season. We talked a lot about them as regression candidates too, and I think they could have a good year. I just think they've had a better window than, say, Liverpool. On the whole, I think they've addressed more of the team needs, I should say, than Liverpool have, and they've been a little more ambitious with their signings. So I am curious to see it there. I am curious why you have Spurs out of your top 6 without ruining too much of one of your other talking points for the night. I see Spurs is not in your top 6. Spurs are 5th for me. Why are Spurs out of your top 6?
Like as good as Harry Kane is, I think that, well, number one, their manager has to prove himself in the Premier League. I know that he's won the last 2 Scottish League titles, but this is the Prem. It's different. But going along all this, transfer drama with Harry Kane and it almost seems like he's being held hostage by the club. Spurs kind of saying we want to be able to have the all-time. We want to say that we were the club of the all-time, Premier League goal scorer and stuff like that. I think it's more that than, Harry Kane wants to stay and break the record. And as much as he'll score this season, I think that they're very questionable defensively for me. And because of that, it's going to be can Harry Kane outscore how many they let in, for most of the season? He's going to have the team on his back. It's a tough thing to do for him. I just think because of that, you have these teams like Newcastle and Brighton who are building projects, and even Chelsea, competing, where they are building something again, and they have these projects that look a little more solidified. Obviously, questions still around all of them, but they seem to be trending in a better direction than what Spurs have kind of been looking like recently.
Okay, I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. I would just like to say that Spurs aren't going to have any European competitions this season, which we've seen historically does help teams out. And it helps when you just have one kind of league to focus on. You have your cup competitions, of course, too. But, I think that's a bright spot. Kane, I would not say he's being held against his will. He seems like he's fine going to Bayern, but he's also fine staying at Spurs. I think he's not a hostage right now. He's not forcing a move. He's not not showing up to training. He's just saying, listen, if Bayern pay the deal, I would like to go there. I already made an agreement with them, but I will also play for Spurs this season. And that seems reasonable. I think it's a totally reasonable thing. It's also reasonable that Spurs won a big fee for him. I get it. I think if Harry Kane stays at Spurs, I think they could have a really good year. They get Van de Ven as a center back. I think they could probably do with one more center back signing. I would honestly like to if they maybe made a goalkeeper signing, but it doesn't seem like that's coming through the pipeline. I think we've also kind of memory hold that they have a terrible injury record last year. They lost a lot of players to injury. And they were not able to get consistent. It was also a really toxic situation. Antonio Conte just seemed to be publicly feuding with the front office, with the players, with everyone. He missed a ton of time last year for health reasons too. They had interim managers, and it was just kind of a mess all the way around. And I think other teams have kind of figured out how to play past Conte. He's never been a totally flexible manager. He's been someone whose tactics don't really adapt and change all that much. So I think that really hurt Spurs last year. I just think that I think if you're talking about a team that maybe finds a better situation this year, Kane in a contract year, I don't know. I think they could have a good season, and I think they could. Postecoglou, I think, is a good manager, and I think there's really just no pressure on them this year. I don't know. And Heung-min Son, I don't think will have as disastrous as a season as he had last year. I have to believe that he's going to get back to scoring in the mid to high teens in the Premier League, and he's not just going to be honestly a non-contributor, because that's what he was last year. You add James Maddison to this mix too. I don't know. I think it's a good team. I think they're being a little slept on. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough.
You had Brighton in your top 6 as well.
I like De Zerbi.
Fair enough.
You know, I like some of the players on the team. I like the Zerbi, and I think that he's a manager that deserves some respect. He always, managed a good Sassuolo side. He's shown that he can be, lead a team to be competitive in the Prem. Given a team that, like you were saying about Spurs, were slept on the last few years. I mean, they've kind of proven it now after top 10 finishes the last 2 years, 2 maybe 3 years. So I think that they continue that upward trajectory, especially if they keep De Zerbi. Like, they're giving him the resources that he needs. Why not stay and try to get Brighton into the Europa League?
So one thing that I like about Brighton is they're playing in the Europa League this year, right? Or they're playing in the Conference League. It's escaping me now, but they're playing in Europe this year. I always struggle, and this was my same beef with Newcastle, why I put them 5th. Teams that have not historically been in top European competition or in regular European competition, it is always a big shift to go from not having those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday games to having them now all of a sudden. And the level of preparation that takes, the level of resources that takes, and the rotation that have to worry about, and the extra depth that you need at positions, it's really rigorous. And I think we often underestimate the impact that can make on a team. It's not to say that Brighton couldn't finish in the top 6. I just think that people have gotten a little carried away with the Brighton love. I'm not calling last year a fluke at all, but I just think that it's a lot, and I don't know that they're guaranteed in that position. I also think they started to struggle down the stretch last year. Teams started to figure them out a little bit. That if you played a little deep on them, they do not have the creative passing to break through. Now they have some good dribblers, some great, like Matoma, of course, is someone that is going to be able to break through some lines, but they're not a team that's really going to break down a low block. Teams started to do that against them, and it became a little more of a challenge for them, a little bit more of a slog. So we'll see. But I do like Brighton. I just did not have them in my top 6.
So to answer your question, they are in Europa League this year. So, to my point, I would say make them be a Europa League regular, right? That's his challenge. There is some news going around with some transfers going out of Brighton. You have the Moises Caicedo transfer saga that's still going on. Chelsea's trying to sign him. Liverpool are eyeing Pervis Estupiñán. And Julio Enisco is a target for Napoli. I think what's important at this juncture for them, if they want to stay in the Europa League, regardless of what happens when they're playing in Europe, right? This could be a team that they don't have the depth and they can't rotate the squad, correctly, and they come crashing out of the group stage in Europe. So what? They have the second half of the season to really stay competitive in the Prem and make sure that they can finish top 6 again. But it seems like a lot of this stuff is very imperative on if they get money from other teams or not, and how quickly, because the transfer window is under a month away from finishing. So they would need to work really quick with the funds that they did get from any outgoing transfers. I'm going to stay with him. A lot of people, like you said, a lot of people like him. They have to proceed with caution, but I'm staying true. I think this is an Italian manager that will be successful in the Prem. I mean, like Conte has been successful. You had that one, was it Di Canio or who was it? The one with Chelsea. He ended up winning the Champions League with Chelsea and then got fired. Yeah. Di Matteo. He didn't do anything in the league, but won the Champions League with Chelsea and then got replaced the next season. I think that, De Zerbi's just going to continue on with, these successful Italian managers for a specific, portion of time.
So, yeah, I don't hate it, but we both had Newcastle in our top 6. I had them 6th. You had them 5th. Newcastle are interesting to me. An interesting team coming into the season. They made some interesting transfers. They add Harvey Barnes, which I think is a good deal for sure. They add Livramento, Sandro Tonali, of course. But largely speaking, not not huge names. They've largely just kept a lot of the same squad as we know it. The only real big outlay was Alan St. Maximin, who went to Saudi Arabia, but largely speaking, it's going to be the same squad. I don't want to say that they overachieved last year, but I think they were even a little surprised that they were finishing in the top 4, that they're going to be in the Champions League group stages this year. And I'm expecting just that with that, again, similar to Brighton, I think when you have that extra midweek to focus on, this could be a team that ends up in a very, very challenging group. This is a team I think that had a lot of momentum last year. I think your first album, you have your whole life to prepare for. Your second album, you have 6 months to make, And I think that is maybe the syndrome that we see with Newcastle this season. It's a little harder with the follow-up than it is on the debut. Can they do it? Absolutely. I think they've shown last year, because there really wasn't much fluky about last season. They were deserved to be where they were. They had a great defensive record too. I expect that that's not necessarily going to fall off, but I do think that they don't have the high quality talent that a lot of teams around them do. That didn't mean anything last year for them. They were still able to be successful. That was also with quite a big underperformance from some teams that we expected to be a lot better. Not even just Liverpool, but Chelsea included in that as well. Really, a lot of the top 6 clubs were not necessarily at the level that we expected them to be. They took advantage of that. Well earned, but I do think we could see maybe a little regression from Newcastle this year. I'm not buying all the way in on them, but I could totally be wrong about that. Of course I could.
Is Guimaraes still there?
Yeah, Bruno Mars is still there.
So they're strengthening this midfield with Tonali, and I know you didn't, you said not big names, but I mean that's a pretty notable player coming to the. Yeah, see the little smirk you got on your face. Listen. Now they have these 2, guys in the midfield who are very strong ball winners and things like that. They can both, play a good pass. They're looking at bolstering their team as well. There's some other rumors, like there was a rumor saying that they were looking at Federico Chiesa. Apparently he's turned down Aston Villa, and Newcastle said his eyes are set on Liverpool, but this is from thehardtackle.com, so I don't know how reputable that source is.
I'm going to go with not very.
There were rumors with Nicolo Zaniolo, but from what I know, I think that he's very happy at Galatasaray. The fans love him. I don't see him leaving. And there's also rumors about Scott McTominay still.
He's rumored to go to West Ham. West Ham, actually, we'll get to this in the transfer roundup, but it's not confirmed yet, but they've agreed a deal for Maguire, and they were trying to get Maguire and McTominay all in one kind of fell swoop.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if McTominay ends up at Newcastle. It does not seem like their type of guy.
Newcastle also interested in Balogun, but who isn't? If they could add him, alongside Isak, that's a pretty deadly duo that could help them, get to a 5th or 6th place finish in the league this year.
I'd be a little surprised if they went for that as well. Just again, doesn't seem to fit. I think Isak is the man that they're going to be rolling with to lead the line this year.
It's not a bad guy to put their trust in, though.
No. Let's get to our relegation candidates, shall we? I'll start with my bottom 3. I have Wolves in 18th. No real particular order with this. Just these are the 3 teams that I expect will at least be definitely in the relegation zone. Maybe not relegated at the end of the season, but I think we'll be hearing these teams all year. Sheffield United and Luton Town. Wolves I've been on all summer. Julian Lopetegui actually just left Wolves by mutual consent. Not great to be losing your manager like 5 days before the season starts, having spent like no money this summer on upgrading the squad. Just a big concern, and this was a team that was bottom. It feels like we've forgotten this, that they were bottom of the table at Christmas last year, and Lopetegui really worked them out of that. And that if it wasn't for some of these other Premier League teams sort of really dropping like rocks last year, Wolves might already be in the championship this season. So it just feels like they're circling the drain here, and it could be a bad season for them. Sheffield United have sold away two big players. Njai went to Marseille. We highlighted that either last week or the week before. That sale, he was their top goal scorer and top assist maker last year. They also just sold Sander Berge to Burnley, which is kind of surprising. he gets a little overrated at times, but he's still like a very starting capable midfielder for them that they sold to Burnley, who you would kind of theoretically expect to be a relegation candidate as well, since they're also coming up from promotion. But yeah, a little bit bizarre from Sheffield. I don't really have a ton of faith in the talent here, and I just I've got big questions about them. And Luton Town, I think this is just a team that is hopping into the deep end, and they're going to sink or swim. I feel like they're going to sink, but it's a memorable story. They've had tons of promotion success. Maybe I shouldn't be doubting it, them, because they've turned the doubters away at every turn, it seems like. But again, you look at the talent available to the squad, it's not great. You look at their player valuations. You have not had a team valued this low since 15-16 Burnley. And a lot has changed in the scene in the last 7 years in terms of player valuation. So not great, but yeah, that's my bottom three. Dom, why don't you go ahead and list off yours?
So I'm still not convinced by Everton. So I've got them in 18th. Wolves were both pretty low on. It doesn't seem like some other analytical websites are, though. But I think that Wolves goes down, and I have Luton Town. I think something like weird happens, like at the end of the season, where there's a lot of teams very close to relegation, and somehow Sheffield United gets a point out of some team, and Everton loses, and Sheffield finishes above Everton, and Everton gets relegated this year. I'm not sold on them. I still have a lot of questions about them, and I feel like last year they got close and they got saved by a couple results at the end of the season. Doucouré kind of saved them from going down the last game of the season. So I think that this year it's just they've got to play better than they did last year. I don't know if they can do that.
Yeah, I do think once they had Sean Dyche in, I do think they settled down a little bit, and they weren't great, but I think they were a little above relegation zone. I think the thing that helps Everton the most is that there were a lot of bad teams in the Premier League that didn't get relegated last year. Bournemouth being one of them, Wolves being one of them, Nottingham Forest. I think they can be kind of just better than the rest. That's all. It's like that saying, like, you don't need to outrun the bear. You just need to outrun the slowest person in your group. I think Everton can kind of live by that principle, but it's not inspiring because they've, again, because of their financial situation, not able to sign a ton of players. We highlighted that. We were talking about their, kind of underperformance in terms of goal scoring last year. And it seems like they were going to really live and die with Dominic Calvert-Lewin's health this season, and that's, I don't know, that's a big risk to make. So, yeah, I agree with the other two, obviously, because I had them as well. But Everton are just going to be, I don't think so. I think they'll do just enough, and hopefully for them they'll have a stable year, and can maybe this is also the last year at Goodison Park because they're building that new stadium. So I think their big hope is that they get some stability with Dyche and are able to kind of balance themselves out a little bit. Dom, let's hear your overachiever and your underachiever for this season.
My overachiever is Nottingham Forest. I think they finished like mid-table. I think they do a little bit better. I think people are going to expect them to struggle this year. But I don't know, something about them just, is screaming to me, hey, we're going to play better than we did last year. And then my underachiever is Spurs. But you kind of heard that earlier in the show. I talked about even if Harry Kane does score a shit ton of goals, I really don't think that they defensively can keep enough goals out of the net so that they can get the results to keep them, in a European spot.
I think Spurs could have a better year. So we disagree on that. I think we already talked a little bit about that. Nottingham Forest, I don't see it with them. I just don't. I didn't see it with them last year. I picked them to get relegated, and they nearly did. I don't see it with them at all. I have a tough time with that one. Morgan Gibbs-White, good player, like him, but there's just not a lot there for me to really sink my teeth into. Seems like they're gonna get Matt Turner, cool. I don't know. That seems like just a team that's in a little bit of flux. I'm not saying they're getting relegated, but I'm not as wild about them as an overachiever.
They got Anthony Alonga now, star boy.
Yeah. Exactly. My overachiever, I picked Burnley mostly because they won the championship last year, and 8 out of the last 10 teams that won the championship that got promoted to the Premier League have stayed in the Premier League. The only 2 teams to not do that were Norwich both times. So already, based on pedigree and just sort of historical trends, you expect that they'll probably stay in the Premier League this year. I do think people have this association with Burnley and associate them a lot with Daesh and sort of terrorist football. And that's not really the way that Vincent Kompany had them playing last year. They were really possession-based. Now, are they going to be able to replicate that at the Premier League level? Probably not. And we saw it go pretty bad against Manchester City when they met them last year. But I do think it's a team that can surprise. I don't know if they're going to be Fulham, because Fulham had a little bit of bounce and luck that helped them out. Which is why they're my underachiever pick. But Burnley, I think can finish. Honestly, I don't really have a ton of fear about them getting relegated this year. I don't know they're going to have a super successful first season like we've seen from some championship teams over the last few years that finish in the top half and things like that. But I think they'll be good. I think they'll be, again, the expectation, I think just the general vibe that most people have when they think of Burnley is sort of very scrappy, boring, dull, maybe even terroristic type of play. And I think people's minds will maybe change on that a little bit this year. It's a big risk, though, playing the way they do when you don't have the talent advantage. And they're kind of a team that has worked a lot with depth of talent and not, sort of singular players. And they also don't have Tella. He's still at Southampton. He was a lone player for them last year who made a big difference for their championship winning season. So we'll see. But I do like Burnley to, I think, outdo a lot of people's expectations of them. My underachiever, after I cough really quick. We were just struggling through it today. My underachiever is Fulham, which I highlighted a little bit. And I think I just think they got the rub of the green last year. I think a lot of things went their way. And they really haven't done a lot this summer to impress me or motivate me or move me in any kind of way. And I just think they're due for a tough season. And I think we saw it with Jose Sa with Wolves a few seasons ago where they had this really great post-shot expected goals. And people talk about how amazing he was, and then it went back down to earth next season. I think you're going to see something probably similar with Bernd Leno this season. I think Mitrovic, it doesn't seem like has any interest in playing for Fulham. He wants to go to Saudi Arabia. We'll see how that issue gets resolved. If Mitrovic is gone, I think this team is in actual trouble.
Yes.
I think you're talking about, I don't know that they're going to get relegated, but they're going to be closer to the relegation zone than I think they'd like to be. I think we just add in the fact that I think they overperformed a little bit on the offensive end last year. I think they overperformed a little bit on the defensive end last year. You meet somewhere in the middle. They also had an insane amount of man advantages last year. They had a ton of red cards against their opposition last season. Just, again, some of that is just luck. You can't help that. It's not maybe not fair to use that against them, but you're not going to have that this year likely. That's just some variance that probably isn't going to be there. So I just expect that they're going to have a worse season than last year, which I don't think is really that crazy, but I think it could be a little bit worse than maybe people are expecting from Fulham this year.
Yeah, explain to me. Top scorer.
I didn't learn my lesson. Okay, I didn't learn my lesson.
Come on, man.
I picked Harry Kane. Now, listen, Harry Kane in any other year is probably winning the Golden Boot last year with 30 goals. That is going to win you the Premier League Golden Boot quite a lot. Obviously, didn't get it last year because he had Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland is great. Erling Haaland is a goal machine. I respect and understand this. This is not a bet against Erling Haaland. This is a bet in favor of Harry Kane, who's going to come out this season, I think, not have a disruptive World Cup campaign either, and I think just have a great year. And I think he could put up low 30s. And I think, listen, Haaland cooled off a little bit at the end of last season. I want to talk about it. He had like 1 goal in 7 games to finish out the season. Haaland is great. I'm not debating it. I'm not arguing against it, okay? I just think Harry Kane is a very good striker. And I think Haaland maybe just cools off a touch. Again, Haaland, my bet against him last year was that he had injury problems coming into Manchester. He didn't face those last year. It's not crazy that, guy could maybe... Manchester City had insane injury luck last year. Maybe the injury bug hits. That's all I'm saying. I think Harry Kane is very good. Realistically, is it probably Haaland? Yeah. But I think Harry Kane is is a great candidate to maybe steal this. And Haaland's the boring pick. Come on, you gotta be a little exciting. How fun is it? How interesting is it to listen to both of those say Haaland and then move on?
Well, listen. I mean, 1 goal in the last 7 games. They were kind of coasting on their way up.
They
to
were not
beating
coasting.
Arsenal.
What are you talking about? They were coasting. They'd win every game. They were not coasting. What are you talking about? We talked every week for the last 2 months of the season how this is what they do. They come from behind. They win 11 straight games to win the title.
That's what I mean. That's coasting for them. So.
That's not coasting. You're crazy.
Listen. Yes, teams kind of may have figured out how to play against Holland, the better teams. But these lower teams,
I did not say teams figured out how to play against Holland. By the way, you are misquoting me. I did not say those words.
No.
Words.
Sorry. I forgot to preface that with I've been reading that online. I've been reading a lot online, especially because Holland was goalless in the Community Shield, right? So everybody's like, "Oh, has Arteta cracked the code?"
He didn't score in the Community Shield last year, by the way. I should add.
Yeah.
And
so
fine for him.
So listen, it's not a question of can he get it done again? It's more how many goals is he going to put up against these lower end teams in each of the games that they play? Like, is he scoring hat tricks in every game? Is he scoring 4 goals against Luton Town? Is he even playing against them? That's the kind of thing that I'm curious about. I do have Haaland as my top scorer. Yes, I get it's a boring pick, but the guy is too good. He's a bit of a bunch of different strikers that we've seen, in our lives kind of mixed together.
I'll just say this.
It's hard to root against him.
Every sports book I looked at had his own over under 29.5. They all saw the same thing we did last year. And these people are smart and they got their little data that they plug into a laptop and spits out the numbers. And 29.5, I don't know.
I'm hammering the over.
I'm going to back Harry Kane. That's all I'm going to do. Sorry.
I mean, your pick isn't bad. It's a very well thought out pick and obviously could happen, right? Even I was talking about Harry Kane's got to put the team on the back. He's got to score a lot of goals. I just think Haaland is just that much better.
Hey, we will be back here in May and we will reconvene. Happy to do it. Okay, let's do a little over-under action. It's fun to just do these and check back in. Last year we got Raheem Sterling, I remember, hilariously wrong last season. Everything else was okay. Alexander, he's I like this one. Over-under 15.5 goals. He had 10 goals last season, only played 22 Premier League games, only started 17 of those. So you expect if he gets to the low 30s, in terms of games played, he could reach that mark. I think it's interesting. I like Isak a lot. You're saying over.
Over.
I'm going to go under on this. I think 13, 14 is I think it's a really good number because I think it's 16 is just a lot. I don't know, but Dom, you're going over. I will go under. I think it's a really tough number there, but I like Isak a lot. And I think as he goes, I think Newcastle will go. But he also still has to split time with Callum Wilson. When Callum Wilson is healthy too, he's shown to be a great option still for Newcastle. He outscored him last year in the Premier League. Dom, I don't know why you're making that face. He had 13 goals. Isak had 10. I don't know what to tell you. That's
how
just
many
the numbers,
games?
bro.
How many games played? How many games played?
So Isak had 22 games played last season in the Premier League. Here's how many Callum Wilson played. Let's see. Callum Wilson last year in the league, he had 31 games played, 21 starts. He had almost as many starts as Isak did games played.
So of course. And then how many more goals did he have? 3?
Yeah.
With how many more games?
What do you want from me?
You don't think Isak could have gotten 3 goals in that many games if he played in all those games?
I'm sorry, it was 18 goals.
Oh, 18 goals. Okay.
I read this.
8 is a little more sizable. That's a little more sizable.
Okay.
But listen. Callum Wilson has a lot of Premier League experience. Don't get me wrong. I like the guy, but I think let Isak get his feet wet a bit. And now he's this season's gonna turn for the better.
Okay.
I sound like a degenerate gambler. That's what I sound when I say that.
Bukayo Saka over under 11.5 goals. I think Arsenal are, again, we talked a lot about them being a young team and young players year on year. You expect to improve and improve in all the areas that they can. You expect goal scoring numbers to kind of go up year on year. For reference, he had 14 goals last year's campaign and 11 assists. So he was a very well-rounded player last season, and that was in 38 games played, 37 starts for him. So he was healthy for pretty much all of last year. So the over/under there is at 11.5. Again, maybe they're expecting just a little bit of underperformance of the XG last season, although I don't think Saka was that crazy with his overperformance last season. Dom, where are you at on this one?
I don't know, to be honest. I think last episode I was talking about Arsenal having all of these options, right? All of these scoring options, and they don't really have to rely on one person. So it's very, likely that somebody could underperform their, predicted, goal outcome. I think that Saka is more of a playmaker than a goal scorer. He has a knack for goals, but I think that for Arsenal to be successful, it's got to be Odegaard and Saka kind of putting together, the plays to set up everybody else to score. So I think he'll if this was assists, I'd bang the over, but I think he may underperform in goals this year.
So you were going under. I'm going over. He's on penalties as well, which I think can always be a nice boost. I think he's great, and I think he leveled up last season, and I think he's, outside of Odegaard, the best player on Arsenal, and maybe Saliba.
100%.
I expect that he is going to have another great season, provided he's healthy. I think he can outdo this number. I think he can get it to 15, 16 goals this season. I love Saka. He's great. This one I love as well. James Maddison, over under 7.5 goals. New man at Tottenham. Not too clear what his role is going to be exactly, but he's been a goal scoring threat over the last few seasons with Leicester. For reference, he had 10 goals last season, 12 goals the season before that. So he is a threat to score. Now, some of those are from set pieces and things like that, which you can maybe expect with guys like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son. Maybe he's not on free kick duty as much potentially, but he still has a great shot, a great knack for arriving late into the box and finding the goal. So Dom, over or under 7.5 goals for James Maddison. Where are you at?
Can I say break even? But no, I'm going to say under.
That is not how half goals
because
work.
you can't get a half goal. So under. I think he gets like 7. I think he kind of stays true to the expected. I don't see him getting an over in this case. I think, like you said, right? He's a set piece. He was Leicester's set piece guy, and he scored quite a few from there. Don't think that Harry, if it's anywhere, in a very light, probable or the word I'm looking for is not coming through right now.
An advantageous spot.
Yeah, thank you. So the Harry Kane's going to be put on that, and is he left-footed or right-footed? Do you know that off the top of your head?
James Maddison is right-footed, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, then he's not going to get as many opportunities there, and he's going to be more of a playmaker than a goal scorer for Tottenham. Harry Kane's the guy. So under, but just under.
Fair enough. That is our Premier League preview for you. I'm going over with James Maddison, by the way. I think he's I think he can hit that number. I think the Spurs squad, I have a good feeling about them. I think they could have a year above expectation. And the expectation, I think, for a lot of people for them is like finishing 8th. And I just think they can do better than that. I really do. I believe in them. Transfer and news roundup to get you out of here. Not great news for Chelsea. Christopher Nkunku out for 3 months with a knee injury, meniscus injury. Not a great start. This is one of the best all-around forwards in all of Europe over the last few seasons. Could do just about everything you want a forward to do. It seemed like he was going to be a guy obviously very important to their plans this season, and now it's going to be a little bit of delay with them. They have some injury concerns already this season. Not a completely deep squad. Just a mystifying variable are this Chelsea team coming into the year. And so it sucks, Nkunku is going to be out to start, but they're going to have to make do somehow. David Raya, we already mentioned, to Arsenal, which also started the shuffle, or this was, I guess, before the David Raya announcement, technically. Matt Turney to Nottingham Forest. David Raya, it feels like this could be a replacement for Aaron Ramsdale rather than just like a premium backup option, because I think David Raya does some things better than Ramsdale does that are a little more important to how Arteta probably wants his team to play. I've seen a lot of people comparing this to Pep replacing Joe Hart. It could be definitely a similar type of thing. I would advise these people that he initially replaced him with Claudio Bravo, which was a disaster. I don't think David Raya is going to necessarily fit that mold, but we'll see. But it is an interesting signing from Arsenal, and maybe a little bit of their intent with this season and how they expect to go. This one was hilarious. I just didn't throw it on for the news because I saw the video earlier today. Juventus fans were on the field and were chanting, "Don't sign Lukaku." Just unbelievable that this guy. I don't know where this guy's going to end up.
MLS. That's the only place. It's literally the only place. Saudi Arabia doesn't want him. Nobody in Europe wants him. He's above going to play.
MLS team.
He's not going to go play in Japan. He's not going to go play in China. He's not going to go play in Russia. He's not going to go play, anywhere out that way. Literally, the only place I can see him going is to the MLS. And I don't know what MLS team is going to sign him, but I think that an MLS team will. And
there's no shot that an MLS team is signing him, Dom. That is one of the wildest things you've ever said, actually. I just want to let you know. That is truly one of the wildest things I've ever heard you say. There's no shot that is happening.
Maybe Megan Thee Stallion can help him come out to Atlanta and
again, I do not foresee Is it Megan Thee Stallion Houston, by the way? I think you got it messed up.
Oh yeah. Sorry, she's from Texas. You're right.
I don't think.
Well, he goes to Dallas FC or Houston Dynamo.
There's literally a Houston team, Tom. This is terrible for you. Just goodness gracious.
Any club in Texas, just so he's,
I don't know where he ends up. Honestly, it's truly.
This is hilarious. What's going on?
Maybe with Nkunku being out, maybe he gets a shot at Chelsea. Who knows? But it just feels like this guy's burned bridges everywhere he's gone, and he's burned bridges at places he hasn't even gone yet. That's next level.
But I do have a question.
Impressive.
I do have a question for you. Coming out of the Juventus camp, it kind of feels a little racist. It's coming from the ultras, like this.
Okay, well, let's not pretend like every Italian club does not have issues with racism.
But this is what I'm asking. Don't you?
I think it's more just like they don't want to.
We don't want you. Don't come here.
I think it's more just they don't want him. I can also remember what Inter. Are you sure about that? I can also remember what Inter ultras had to say about him and posted on signs when he left Inter. So. Let's just call it a draw, shall we, on the racism front. Leave it the fuck alone. Harry Maguire to West Ham. Seems like this is going to happen. £30 million.
Yeah.
David Moyes, I don't know what is going on in his brain. James Ward-Prowse, Harry Maguire. He wants Scott McTominay. Someone needs to just... It's like if you've ever had an older person in your life that insists on driving, when they're like 88 and are just clearly not with the physical capacity to drive anymore, but you have to get in the car with them to go to like Thanksgiving dinner. It's like, yeah, grandpa's behind the wheel. Everybody brace for impact. It just feels like that with David Moyes. Like, why are we letting him do this? This is bad. This is all bad. Not a great thing. Speaking of West Ham transfer wins, Gianluca Scamacca back to Italy with Atalanta. Should have never left. Should have took my advice. That's fine. You just wasted a year of your career. Not a big deal. You know how long careers are. You could waste a total year of it, and it's not a huge deal whatsoever. But it is a good landing spot for him with Atalanta, a team obviously that is good at creating chances for its strikers. They've really needed, I think, a new striker. Obviously, with Hoyan being gone too, it's a good replacement there. Hoyan seemed like the next option for them. I think this is a fine intermediary. because they really couldn't rely on some other old guard now. They have to refresh the squad just a little bit. I think it's a good signing for them, pretty low risk, and I think we've seen him last time in Italy. He got I think 16 goals to Sassuolo. Like, this is a guy that can put up numbers here. I think it's a little more comfortable and a much better situation than West Ham was for him. So I think this could be a nice little bounce back season for Scamacca.
No, I mean I'm a fan of him. I wanted him in Milan for a while. I was kind of pissed to see him go to England, go to West Ham. And I was kind of saying that to at least myself. I don't know if I ever said it on the show, but like going to the Prem was going to like ruin, his career. Not ruin, but you know what I mean. It's funny. Atalanta takes their transfer money and gets Gianluca Scamacca. West Ham gets their, which in turn gives West Ham transfer money, and they spend it on Harry Maguire. It's crazy. It's literally crazy.
Well, I think it's the Declan Rice money more than anything, but yeah.
Oh, yes.
I think it's
the 30 million pounds, but yeah.
I think it's the 100 million they got from Arsenal that they demanded to be paid within like 18 months. I think it's that money.
Regardless, they're taking that money and they're signing Harry Maguire. Like, do you expect anything less from David?
Harry Maguire is like fine. Like he's really not that bad of a Denver. I just think it's him with Scott McTominay and James Ward-Prowse. James Ward-Prowse to me is especially egregious. It's all really uninspiring, and it's not good business. And again, I just
they
think
have money, and
someone needs to take the cars away from Grandpa. That's
so crazy to me. They got 100 million pounds, and this is a team that was in the Europa League. A team that was like kind of teetering the line of maybe sneaking in fourth a couple of years ago, and they underperformed last year, obviously. Very close to getting relegated, and they spend. Yes, they in order for them to improve and fix what they needed to fix, they needed to sell a player like Declan Rice, because the money that they get from that kind of transfer you can't turn down. And they go out and spend it like this. They want to sign Scott McTominay. Like,
yeah, that's
what is this?
And they want to sell Lucas Paquetá to Manchester City. So we'll see.
Yeah, they're going to regret that one too.
Yeah, well, I would be honest, I think Paquetá wildly overrated. That's just my
put him in Pep's system. Watch what happens.
Yeah, you can put me in Pep's system. Like,
I can't wait.
Play a lobbed ball over top to Erling Haaland. I'm gonna get 7 assists in that system.
Listen, I can't wait to see the dances he does with Haaland. That's all I'm saying.
If he actually lives there, let's not get crazy. Let's not get carried away. Tom, anything to say before we get out of here?
Yeah. So I looked up after I filled out my predictions. I went on Opta Analyst and saw their season predictions. They obviously had Manchester City with the highest chance, then Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, Newcastle, Chelsea, Brighton. So I think that was like their top. And then their relegation, their bottom three were Bournemouth, Sheffield, and Luton Town. They also had Everton and Nottingham Forest just outside of that. Wolves with only a 16.47% chance of relegation. So that was pretty interesting. So yeah, I don't think either of us were too far off the supercomputer that did the predictions for the season. So
I will just say this: we are not gamble responsibly, all that, and we are not. It's not financial advice, none of that.
Yes,
I've only ever given out one other pick for odds that I thought were just a little off, and that was when Real Madrid won the Champions League, and they were like plus 1,000 just because they were playing PSG the first round. And I told you to bet money on that, and you should have.
Hey, listen to this too. I called Spurs to underperform. I mean, would you consider 8th underperforming for Spurs?
Here's my advice. You can still get Wolves at plus 250. When they start to get relegated, when they start the season with 3 straight losses, you will not be able to get that number for the rest of the season. You will not get them at plus money.
Yep.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. If you can tell me how a team that scored 31 goals last year and got rid of one of its starting strikers and its top scorer, who was Ruben Neves, with 6 goals, if you can tell me how that team is
Yeah,
gonna
he's
not
gone
get
now.
relegated and just fire their manager, if you can tell me that, then don't put the money on it. But I'm just telling
you're
you,
putting a lot of trust in Raul Jimenez to have a bounce back after being injured. So
he's gone. He's at Fulham.
oh, that's right. He's at Fulham.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not looking good.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. We'll be back next week with a recap of Premier League action and, get this, a SerieA preview, because not this weekend, next weekend, SerieA is back. Italy, the Spaghetti Boys, they're all back. Gnocchi Gang, all of it. So there's plenty to keep you hooked, locked, and loaded. Until next time, we will talk to you next time. See you.